Missouri Military Academy, 100 years passing in review. Cadets, alumni, faculty, and friends are celebrating 100 years of history at MMA. It's a school with a colorful, exciting past and a bright, promising future. These young men, and those who marched here before them, share a unique bond. It's a bond of friendship and togetherness. It's a bond that has little to do with things military and everything to do with respect, comradeship, teamwork, and an understanding of how to bend the rules a little. During the next few minutes, we'll share some of those moments and memories as we look back at the Academy's history as an institution and as a place where thousands of boys have become men. The first reveille sounded at Missouri Military Academy back in September of 1890. Just a year earlier, in the fall of 1889, the people of Mexico had asked Professor A.F. Fleet to start a military school in their town. Fleet was a native Virginian, a former Confederate officer, and acting president of the University of Missouri. With the backing of former Missouri Governor Charles Hardin and $15,000 from the people of Mexico, Fleet built the first academy on the western edge of town. A 90-foot tower dominated the Gothic design of the main hall. About 75 cadets enrolled that first year at a price of $325 apiece. Of course, even then, uniforms cost extra. Cadets formed a band, a football team, and published a newspaper called the MMA Focus. One early focus contains a song about the Fleet cadets and the girls of Hardin College, and it contains this tidbit about Colonel Fleet, that he could trace his ancestry to one of the first Jamestown settlers. By all accounts, Fleet ran a successful school with a growing enrollment averaging about 100 cadets. Then on September 24th, 1896, everything changed. Just after midnight, Cadet Bonfoy awoke to the smell of smoke. Flames raced through the barracks. Cadets jumped from windows some 3 stories high. Half the cadets suffered injury, but no one died. But the academy lay in ruins, and Colonel Fleet packed his cadets off to Indiana's Culver Military School. The drums that had rolled for 5 years rolled no more. The academy was silent. That silence remained for 4 years, but in 1900, new classic-style buildings began to rise from the bluegrass pasture on Mexico's eastern edge. Mexico civic leaders had convinced the president of Hardin College, A.K. Yancey, and the head of the Alabama Military Institute, W.D. Fonville, to rebuild MMA. The cadets returned in the fall of 1900 at a price of $290 for the year. But within another year, another crisis struck MMA. President Yancey died, and some worried that the hopes of the academy might be buried with him. But Fonville finally agreed to become the sole proprietor of MMA, and in those years after the turn of the century, Fonville put his stamp on the school, a stamp that remains to this day. Cadets earned rank for good deportment, virtue, high scholarship, and military excellence. Fonville expelled cadets who refused to comply with the rules. In 1907, he dismissed 23 cadets, nearly a quarter of the cadet corps, for hazing a new boy. Fonville enrolled his daughter Ruth at the academy, and she became MMA's only female graduate. Fonville also encouraged the return of athletic teams like football and baseball. A forerunner of the Dramateers, the Dramatic Club, formed in 1908, and music groups flourished, with the orchestra entertaining cadets and townsfolk, and the bugle corps regulating the daily routine, much as the drum and bugle corps does today. Throughout the first decade of the new century, Fonville guided the academy toward a goal of excellence and stability. In 1911, Fonville sold the academy to a group led by this man, Colonel W.R. Cord. Corps had operated St. Charles Military Academy near St. Louis. Corps worked to improve MMA's military standing, but enrollment lagged. The Corps averaged just 80 cadets, and after just 3 years, Corps sold out. In the fall of 1914, another Virginian became president of MMA, Colonel Emmett Young Burton. One of Colonel Burton's first moves was to adopt a new school motto: love, honor, truth. He also instituted the Big Brother Plan, a step away from the harsh discipline of the early years. And along with building a new philosophy, Burton built new facilities. In 1914, a new gym. In 1917, A barracks. In 1919, just off campus, D barracks. Junior school cadets lived there first, but when that didn't work, they moved permanently into what's now called B barracks. In the years since, D Company has housed some of MMA's most adventurous cadets. As the threat of the First World War loomed on the horizon, the Academy had to reassure parents that the school's main goal was not to turn boys into soldiers. In the fall of 1917, the Academy became an early member of the Reserve Officer Training Corps, ROTC. In 1918, the war ended, and the popularity of military schools grew. As the Cadet Corps grew, so did the faculty. Joining the 19-member faculty in 1920 were Mexico native Marcus Wallace and a friend from Virginia, C.R. Stribling, Jr. Stribling had bet Wallace that Wallace couldn't get him a job in his hometown. Wallace collected on that $5 bet. Wallace also earned a reputation among cadets as an outstanding teacher, band director, and ladies' man. Stribling became popular for his fairness and understanding as assistant commandant and for his gallant courtships. During the 20s, General John J. Pershing and former President William Howard Taft both visited the Academy, and cadets in the 20s worked long hours to win the Army Department's coveted honor rating, but they always fell short. In 1929, a West Point grad, Colonel J.G. Taylor, requested assignment to the ROTC unit with the worst record. The Army sent him to MMA. But by the end of his first year as professor of military science, Taylor and his cadets had forever changed MMA's reputation. The 1930 Corps of Cadets won that honor rating, and with it, the right to wear the white star on their sleeves. But the success of the Corps could not change the financial failures that plagued the world outside the front gates. The stock market had plummeted, and so would enrollment. It dropped from a peak of 269 cadets in 1929 to fewer than 100 in the fall of 1933. Colonel Burton couldn't keep the bills paid. MMA was bankrupt. The Academy's bondholders tried to force Burton to pay up, but he refused. So the bondholders turned to the commandant, Major Stribling, to reorganize the school. Stribling and 5 others each put up $1,500, a huge sum in those days, and as Stribling once said, they went to work, really worked, to revive a dead horse. The cadets who remained in 1933-34 faced a multitude of struggles. Perhaps the biggest, though, came the day before government inspection. Fire raced through the gymnasium, and firefighters could do little to save it. But even with the gym in ruins, the cadets kept their honor rating. But the insurance company refused to pay for the fire damage. Colonel Stribling later wrote in his memoirs that he argued for months with the company. Then he took a train to Chicago to talk with the head honcho. He finally came back with a check big enough to rebuild the gym, refurbish all the barracks, and add what is now the music building. As the Depression faded, enrollment grew. The Academy bought acreage behind the main campus and built Camp Miss Malacca. During the summer months, as this rare footage from the late 30s shows, the boys who enrolled had plenty to do. Activities included badminton, archery, volleyball, arts and crafts, and they even played softball without the benefit of gloves. A diving tower was built so boys could high dive, And among the boys who attended, a young Charlie Stribling. His father was in charge, along with help from faculty members Marcus Wallace, Jerry Cox, Ray Kelly, and Tony Lumpkin. In 1938-39, Bill Weisert commanded a special cadet corps, the Golden Jubilee Battalion. 50 years of MMA history had passed in review. During the year, Colonel Stribling pinned a Golden Jubilee medal to each cadet's dress uniform, and Missouri Senator Harry Truman reviewed the corps. But the big event came at Mother's Day in May of 1939. Postmaster General and potential presidential candidate James Farley visited the academy. Missouri Governor Lloyd Stark and other dignitaries also joined the Golden Jubilee festivities. PFC Charlie Stribling, with some help from his sister Suzanne, greeted the politicians at the family home on Promenade. Then it was off to the academy for the now traditional flower pinning ceremony. There, as she did for decades, Colonel Stribling's wife, Ruth Cawthorn Stribling, pinned white flowers to the lapels of cadets whose mothers were no longer living. The dignitaries then trooped the line at a battalion review on what then was the Academy's only athletic and parade field. 2 film cameramen recorded the events, and fortunately their color film has survived. The Corps and their parents also heard speeches given on front campus from Governor Stark, from Colonel Hitch of Kemper, and from Farley. Farley told the cadets and a nationwide network radio audience that military training for national defense was the most American thing in America. 2.5 years later, some of the same cadets who heard his speech would march off to World War II. The Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor came just days before the Academy's first evensong. Eugene Lamb, Elmer Jackson, and Chester Nunn organized the ceremony of songs and scripture, and every year since then, thousands have shared the Christmas spirit of evensong. Right after the 1941 Christmas break, Colonel Stribling led the entire Corps downtown, where he signed the cadets up for the program for civilian defense. ROTC training took on added meaning as cadets raced through drills with machine guns and other automatic weapons. Some cadets would graduate from MMA and immediately become commissioned officers, and some faculty members, like Major Tony Lumpkin, were returned to active duty. In Africa, Lumpkin named his tank Missouri Military Academy. The Germans would later take Lumpkin prisoner. More than 1,000 young men with MMA ties served in World War II. This star-filled banner still hangs at the Academy, honoring those men. The Gold Stars, 24 of them in all, offer silent tribute to those who died. Enrollment remained high during the war and through the late 40s. Traditions continued, including close-order drill on the streets of Mexico. During the early fall and late spring, cotton khaki remained the uniform of the day. During the winter months, cadets changed to olive drab garrison uniforms. 1948 brought major changes to MMA. Principal Marcus Wallace, Commandant Tony Lumpkin, and the head of the junior school, Glenn Hocker, decided to pursue other interests. The 3 longtime faculty members and part owners sold their interest in the academy. Colonel Stribling bought them out and established MMA as a not-for-profit school. Eugene Lamb then took over as principal. Chester Nunn became commandant of cadets. G. David Bailey took charge of the junior school, and longtime band director Elmer Jackson accepted new responsibilities as admissions director. As cadets marched into the 50s, other faculty members arrived who would shape the academy and its cadets for decades. In 1952, Paul Churches returned from a tour of duty in Korea to direct MMA's music department. Joe Bailey returned from overseas to coach football and wrestling, and later to serve as athletic director. A faculty member's son and MMA graduate, Bob Piper, returned to teach in the junior school with his father, George Piper. And another alum, Charlie Stribling, returned to teach English and handle public relations. In the early 50s, enrollment dropped as Americans grew disillusioned with the military. By 1952, the Corps numbered just 220 cadets. In those days, it cost just over $1,300 a year to enroll, and of course, uniforms still cost extra. In 1954, the everyday uniform changed from the old olive drab to the blue serge that cadets wear today. In 1957, the band, led by band commander and drum major Sam Bird, marched in President Dwight Eisenhower's second inaugural, the first of 6 such presidential appearances for MMA units. By the late 50s, enrollment had rebounded, and the academy had more cadets than classroom space. In 1956, a new junior school academic building went up, and 2 years later, construction began on the high school academic building. When the new building opened in the fall of 1958, it meant bigger classrooms and better science equipment. It also meant a more spacious mess hall. The old mess hall became the new canteen. Cadets now call it the Student Center, and it's equipped with foosball and MTV. In 1960, the Colonel supervised construction of his favorite building, the Memorial Chapel, a memorial to the cadets and faculty who had died in service to their country. The colonial Williamsburg-style building with the stained glass window of Christ the Good Shepherd became a sanctuary of quiet reflection, a more appropriate setting for evensong and for weekly Vespers services. In 1961, cadets again marched in review in Washington. President Kennedy saw the Fusiliers at his inaugural. In 1963, the Diamond Jubilee Battalion formed under the command of John Unnerstall. 75 years of MMA history had now passed in review. Again, each cadet wore a medal to mark the anniversary, and several prestigious alums returned to be honored during special convocations. The first, at Dad's Day, included an honor guard inspection and speech by the former Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Clifton B. Cates, class of 1910.
Learn to be a leader. It doesn't make any difference whether you're playing tiddlywinks or football or what. But when you go out in life, set a goal. Know what you want to do and go to it.
Just a month later, a stunned cadet corps huddled around TV sets to learn of President Kennedy's assassination. Army Lieutenant Sam Bird from the MMA class of 57 commanded the President's funeral guard. The Diamond Jubilee Battalion concluded its year of pomp and pageantry by dancing to the sounds of the Glenn Miller Band at the final ball, and by cheering the command that every cadet waits 9 months to hear. As the 60s marched on, enrollment grew, remaining at or above 300 every year. Under Colonel Eugene Lamb's guidance, academic standards toughened. Winning the Honor Cord, or Brain Cord as some called it, became more valued. Membership in Delta Phi was cherished. The percentage of cadets headed to college after their senior review regularly registered above 90%. But when cadets of the 60s departed the Academy's ordered life, they faced an increasingly turbulent world. Vietnam had heated up, and so had anti-war and anti-military sentiment. Cadets also saw many former classmates and military instructors answer the call to duty in Vietnam. 7 of them, including Glenn Tomick, Sergeant Billy Crawford, and Sergeant Lewis McDermott, would not return. In 1965, the Fusiliers passed in review for President Lyndon Johnson, and construction began on one of the Academy's most ambitious projects, the Field House. A spring windstorm in 1966 delayed the project, but in February of 1967, Lieutenant Governor Tom Eagleton dedicated the building. At the time, the Field House was the biggest facility of its kind in the state. But more important to cadets, it meant no more shivering on a windswept Colonel's field or sloshing through 6 inches of snow on the slab for Sunday review. MMA musicians in the 1960s excelled. One sign of that, the elaborate shows that Paul Churches created to entertain football fans at halftime. In 1968, every member of the marching band received a first-place medal for their performance in the state music contest. As the Corps marched to front campus for final formation in May of 1968, you could see another dramatic change. Echo Company was rising along the shore of Teardrop. Cadets would move in the following fall, and for the first time, that would mean band members would live in the same barracks, C Company. But an even bigger change awaited cadets in the fall of 1968. Colonel C.R. Stribling decided to hang up his suit. The old man, as many cadets affectionately knew him, became chairman of the board. He felt he'd achieved his one goal, and now he wanted to slow down.
I had one ambition. That was to make a good military school. We had to build up a plan. Where did my money go? Look at the buildings. I had a choice. I could take your money. I could have been $1 million. You put this in, I don't give a damn. I could have been $1 million. But I had another objective. I wanted a good school, and we've got one of the best schools in the entire United States.
But the colonel didn't fade away. He visited campus regularly, sometimes lecturing senior English classes on Shakespeare, politics, religion, and life. He traveled on educational tours and chatted with cadets. In later years, some would ask what that old man with the beard had done for the school. That just gave him another chance to smile. The colonel's son, Colonel Charles Stribling III, took over as president. During his first year, enrollment reached an all-time high, 351 cadets. And that same year, 1969, the band performed for President Nixon. By the fall of 1972, Vietnam and the public's disillusionment with the military hit the Academy hard. Enrollment plummeted to just 230. Because there weren't enough cadets, Delta Company closed. But unlike other troubled military schools, MMA didn't back away from ROTC or tradition. Peck's haircuts remained a bi-weekly routine. Discipline remained strict. And teachers demanded respect and excellence in the classroom. And by the next year, 1973, enrollment had rebounded to nearly 300. The Academy faced the challenges of the 70s with familiar faces taking on new roles. G. David Bailey retired in 1971, and Darrell Kuhlman became junior school headmaster. Eugene Lamb would also retire, and longtime science teacher John Reddick would serve as principal for several years. In 1973, the Fusiliers marched for President Nixon, and in 1977, both the Fusiliers and band made the trek down Constitution Avenue for President Carter. The Corps and cadet leaders of the 1970s maintained high military standards. Every year, cadets earned the Army's new honor rating with distinction after GI, AFI, or CI, whatever the Pentagon decided to call the annual inspection. But one longtime staple of those inspections did disappear. By the mid-70s, cadets no longer donned fatigues and engaged in tactics. But in the late 70s, under the guidance of senior Army instructor Artie McClure, Army Day became a regular fixture. The day after government inspection became a day of fun and competition as companies vied for the golden boot. In the classroom, cadets in the 70s and 80s saw an increasing demand for writing skills and computer literacy. Extra help sessions were added every morning and afternoon to allow teachers more time to work individually with students. As cadets marched into the 80s, it became clear that MMA had survived the turbulence that had claimed other, less stable military schools. Enrollment remained well above 300, a new swimming pool opened, and the school's academic status remained outstanding. In a 1981 television interview, the young Colonel Stribling reflected on the school's goals and success.
We feel that within a military structure, we can teach some things which are very valuable to a young man and very valuable to our country, such things as citizenship, respect for authority, respect for oneself, respect for others, respect for property, and to avoid the cliche, I'm going to use it nonetheless, respect for God and country.
A cadet told the same reporter that part of the daily routine did become a bit tedious, though.
We march a little bit too much, I think. You know, we march into mess and 3 times a day. That's the only part that I think is a little bit out of it. Do you think it's good for you? I think it is. I think self-discipline is real good for you.
And that discipline and marching apparently did pay off for Braxton Pollard and his classmates. That year, the Cadet Corps regained the Gold Star and the honor rating with distinction that had been lost a year earlier. In the fall of 1983, Ron Kelly, a veteran teacher and admissions director, was promoted to executive officer, Colonel Stribling's right-hand man. 2 years later, a member of the class of 1955 and Charlie Company commander earned a promotion to commandant. Bob Samples enforces the rules, counsels cadets, and cheers the colonel.
Let's go defense! All right, let's go!
In December of 1983, the Corps fell silent. The flag was lowered to half-staff. Colonel C.R. Stribling had died. His funeral was held in his beloved Memorial Chapel. Outside, the Fusiliers formed an honor guard for his last trip across campus. At his gravesite, family, friends, and cadet officers saluted the colonel a final time to the strains of old MMA. Throughout the 80s, cadets made a mark for MMA in the Midwest and throughout the nation. In 1983, the entire Cadet Corps passed in review at St. Louis's Veterans Day Parade and marched home with the trophy as the best military unit. In 1985, the entire Corps marched in the bitter cold for Governor John Ashcroft's inaugural. And during the summer of 1985 came an award that reflected honor on cadets, faculty, and alumni. The Education Department and President Reagan named the Academy an exemplary private school, the only military school in the nation so honored. In 1986, 2 faculty veterans decided to retire. Quartermaster Orville Maupin, who for many years had also run the mess hall, marked his last trouser hem, and junior school headmaster Darrell Kuhlman graded his last social studies exam.
No, Van Buren, you are by the numbers. All out.
Colonel Bob Piper now heads the junior school, helping youngsters deal with the successes and failures of cadet life.
You got your thumb. Like should be around it. Remember? You're eliminated.
Learning to deal with ups and downs is what the Academy's athletic program has always been about. Wrestlers, riflemen, runners, and football players claim some of MMA's proudest athletic moments. But during the past 100 years, every Colonel team has earned some degree of success. In just 4 years of existence, varsity soccer has earned a reputation as one of the top teams in mid-Missouri. Cross country has competed for only a decade, but Colonel runners regularly show strong. Golfers have seen remarkable success, especially in the 70s and 80s, and MMA's swimmers have glided to 3 unbeaten seasons in the 80s. MMA has played baseball nearly as long as the school has existed. In the late 30s, Bert Avedon and Woody England starred for the Colonels. But winning basketball teams at MMA have been few and far between. But a number of players, including Bob Gibbons in the 50s and Rocky Adkins in the 70s, have provided some spectacular moments on the court. In 1928, 29, and 30, MMA riflemen won 3 straight Hearst National Championships. That earned those cadets a trip to the White House to visit President Hoover. With today's expanded fieldhouse range, the cadets continue to fire some of the highest scores in the Midwest. MMA's dominance in track and field dates to the 1930s. Athletes like Jack Webb, Frank Russo, and his brother Sam led the 1937 team to the state track championship. Several times since then, other top performers have worn the maroon and gold at the state meet, and several teams have finished unbeaten in head-to-head meets, most recently the 1984 track team. During the late 50s and early 60s, undefeated seasons became routine for Joe Bailey's wrestlers. Led by men like Ray Zimmerman and Bill Keaton, the Colonels won 43 straight dual meets from 1957 through 1963.
Outside, quick pitch, come on!
But with more than half the cadet corps playing on an intramural or varsity team, it's impossible to deny that at MMA, football is king. Captain Joy Kistler coached MMA's first unbeaten football team in 1928. In the 1930s, when these pictures were taken, Coach Jerry Cox was leading the Colonels to several winning seasons. Company teams also formed, and the junior school Lions and Eagles put on exhibitions at the University of Missouri. The junior schoolers also played other area schools until the early 60s. In the 1940s, Major James Folks coached MMA, and in the 1950s, Joe Bailey took over as MMA's football coach. In 1964, his boys carved out an unbeaten season of 7-0-1. In this game, runs by Gary Schaefer and Dave Arbogast led the Colonels to a 26-0 victory over Wentworth. A victory over Principia and the final win over Mark Twain were especially sweet. Colonel Stribling joked that his boys had stopped building character and started winning football games. 10 years later, the Colonels did it again, finishing with a 10-0 record. Running backs Jackie Shropshire, Rich Lynch, and Mark Jadwin, and linemen Tom Whitman and Kai Carlson were among the top athletes the Academy ever produced. Joe Bailey retired from football that year, a winner, turning the coaching duties over to Dave Steinmetz.
Gerardo out. Going over the two-point conversion now.
Under Coach Steinmetz, the football Colonels have continued an important tradition, beating Kemper. The Kemper MMA series is one of the oldest prep school rivalries west of the Mississippi, and Kemper dominated during the early years. But since the gold football became the game trophy in 1943, MMA has dominated. The Colonels have won every game since 1971. No high school football game anywhere can match the color, pageantry, and emotion generated by the yearly battle between Kemper and MMA.
It's been a great tradition, man, and we hope certainly that the better team will win. Without any prejudicial stay, I'm sure you do. We don't feel that way.
can't talk about MMA without talking about the Fusiliers. Back in 1933, Major Tony Lumpkin and 36 dedicated cadets created the drill team. They performed their routine on campus and occasionally traveled to basketball games and to the Drake relays. In later years came performances at pro football and pro basketball games. Until the late 60s, the military department handled the team. One of those ROTC instructors, Sergeant Valley Furlow, guided the Fusiliers to 3 straight Missouri drill championships. Then, in 1968, Kenneth Mortensen moved from the junior school to the upper school, and Mort took charge of the Fusiliers.
Dress and cover, Joe's gonna kill you. You're miserable.
For 2 decades, those words have rung in the ears of every Fusilier. Mort demands perfection, and cadets provide it. The Fusiliers of the 1970s and 80s have won 7 national championships, a dozen state titles, and dozens of other awards. The drill team has been photographed from every angle, but no one has captured the essence of the Fusiliers quite as well as did a University of Missouri crew in 1977.
Lesson review!
As you watch today's cadets pass in review, you can't help but remember your own days in ranks. Older alums will hearken back to the days of white duck trousers and Colonel Stribling wearing his breeches and boots. Some will think of the pie-eating contest at Field Day, or you may relive memories of the successes and failures of riding at Gymkhana. Or maybe you'll think about walking through the formal garden, what's now called Junior Walk.
Try to remember, and if you remember, then follow.
You may remember Queenie and her pups. You may think of Doc Epple's old car at football games, and his cheer of "Get those carpetbaggers." You may recall dressing outrageously for homecoming, or spoofing the faculty at a talent show. You may think of those dreary February days, waiting in mail line for a letter from home. Or it may be that you recall that hug from Mom and Dad after winning an award, or losing your cap on a blustery spring day. We all carry memories of our cadet days. That's what this half hour has been all about. Memories, change, the passing of time. Perhaps the greatest wisdom you can draw from these past 100 years is that no matter how much things change, they still stay the same at Old MMA.